So, we can say hello to you, everyone.
Hi, guys.
This is a new season of CG Talks, the podcast where CG guys talk about CG. And I am DJ.
I'm Marco.
And I'm Michał.
And we are going to talk about the upresing revolution that's coming. The 4K, the 8K, the 16K, or whatever K you can come up with, and the people in tech companies are going to market to us generally higher resolutions in video, in renderings, and everything that's connected with that.
Yeah,
And
so
I
think
this
size...
is not going to happen, so this is the end of the podcast.
Yeah. But it is already happening to some extent, at least. Yeah. You told me before the podcast that you bought a 4K TV yourself, so...
I
you
didn't
did?
have a TV. Yeah, I didn't have a TV for like 10 years. I was moving all the time, so I was just using my computer and screen to watch movies. And finally, I settled. My grandma noticed that I don't have a TV, so she said that there's something very wrong with me and how I handle my life.
How could you live with that?
And she pressed
TV,
me. She
right?
pressed me to buy TV. And
That's a real generation gap. I remember we haven't had a TV set for a very long time. We recently just got a TV from our family, just like you, all older people from our family just gave us their older TV set, and we kind of like have it in the room, and sometimes use it as a monitor for a computer. So like not really even like using regular TV, just internet stuff.
Get alive. I mean,
it's like a generation thing, probably.
So I bought it, and I wanted to buy quite a big. I think it's 63 inches, and for me it was huge because the last TV I had. I mean, I think I had never had my own TV, but like the last it was like 3 times smaller, and so it was huge, and there was that 4K everywhere. I knew that, for example, Blackmagic released the 4K camera some time ago, Blackmagic Pocket Camera. I saw this old stuff about HDMI cables being able to support 4K. So I thought, okay, so I started to watch this stuff online with 4K, like this, lions on the savannah and stuff like that. And I watched there's a very cool 3D animation. It's the future of the universe time lapse. So if you have a big TV or even not, this is a very cool thing to do. It's on YouTube. It's 45 minutes. It's quite a long thing because there's like this assumption that every 3 seconds the time goes faster 2 times. So lots of stuff is happening there. So I thought, okay, so this is new thing. We also had some customers on Garage Farm who rendered 4K. Not a lot of them, but it happened from time to time. So I thought okay, so this is happening. We are moving to 4K, and I bought this 4K TV, and so then I started to actually ask questions on some forums like Cinema 4D Cafe, and asking about that, and seemingly I was kind of fooled by the market because this is not. If it is happening, it's not going to happen the way I thought. I didn't. It's not like the natural next step of the quality of movies, of renders, CG, VFX. It looks like this is on the edge of a marketing hype.
Yeah, unless we get to be kind of like, I don't know, cyber enhanced people that have some extra capabilities, because it from what I've seen about that topic, it comes down to like how people perceive reality and how it's a little bit different than the technical stuff we produce, but generally there's some kind of a limit to our eyes perception and also the way that we process the images with our brains. That's how the whole animated movies like motion pictures came into play, that people were able to trick their eyes, right? So that the animated picture seems like moving because we perceive it as a moving picture on a specific frame rate. And yeah, the quality, it's also like the resolution is at some degree it stops having impact, right, on how you perceive the picture. It's all maybe just for bigger screens, and you can't really just go crazy with the screen size all the time, because when you have a bigger screen, then you have to watch it from farther away anyways, so the distance increases, and yeah, and the rooms are not getting bigger for screens or TVs or whatever, so there's a kind of limit to how dense you can really see, right?
Yeah.
How big a resolution. And then the human eye is very, very interesting because it has it seems like it has a super big resolution, so to speak, but if you dig into the qualities of the human eye, it has a big resolution, but only in a small spot in the middle, right? So you have the focus point, and then you have a really lower resolution of your retina, right? Or on the the outer spaces of the eye, so that you can focus very heavily on details in where you focus your view, and the eyes are constantly moving, so you're not really getting a single image all the time, but you're just sampling from constantly moving pictures, and your brain interprets that.
Yeah, brain has a very big role into how we see.
Right, right. Because you even have the blind spot in the middle of the eye, and you don't really see it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because your brain fills in the gap.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, it's also about this all linear workflow and gamma stuff, which was gamma was created to mimic the to at least be able to give to mimic the the way eye reads the colors and the lightness of the image. Both the retina elements and brain are trying to get as much information from the image as it's possible. I mean, the information which is needed, because there's a lot of information which is not needed at all, and it's kind of doing this gamma stuff, your eye and brain yourself. Like you can, with your photo camera, either your room is exposed correctly, and the view behind the window is completely overblown, or the view is okay and the room is very dark. So your brain's trying to kind of bump the shadows for the information.
We're starting this conversation with the TVs, and I think that's deliberate. It's not maybe most of the thing that you do as a CG artist is not TV related, but then the standards are set by the TV industry, because the TVs are such a big market for general public, right? So kind of the whole trends, the whole idea of 4K, first the HD, these are standards for TV broadcast, really. So they are standards for this branch and for TV screens, and then of course the computer screens as well, and generally all the hardware. And it's first it was I think 720p, right? That was the HD format. And then there was full HD, and then we are doubling the width of it, and then we have the UHD 4K, right? And it all goes like that, with doubling the width with pixels and quadrupling the number of pixels used, right?
I was thinking actually that this 4K was used for post-production, and even if the output is full HD, because
there's definitely some benefit, like in frame rates, for example. If you go higher in the frame rates, even if it's not needed for your viewing experience, if your end product is going to be 30 frames per second, but if you have a higher frame rate footage shot, then you have a lot more information captured, so you can like do a slow-mo easier and stuff like that. So in higher, like you can always do higher resolutions and then like downscale it and just use the information that you have, like upscale. But the interesting stuff is that I've recently come across a software that is doing the upscaling, like digitally upscaling images using AI technology. So perhaps it's not always needed, it might not be needed in the future to capture higher resolution, but just use like clever algorithms to upscale it, to then maybe downscale it and have some like AI guesswork done.
Yeah, I just thought that this 4K, 8K is needed to apply some effects and maybe do some compositing of the rendered image with the footage, and then you downscale it and you have the crisp and without any artifacts, with good anti-aliasing, let's say.
You can zoom it, crop it, and stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. So at least to zoom in and crop it, this 4K is needed. So yeah, so I thought that is going to be used that way, but I made some research and talked with some guys on the forums, and it looks like this enlarging AI software is good enough to get this effect, and it's much faster. So there's no need to render the 4K.
There's the question of distributing the content, because right now you have this like 4K resolution in terms of TVs, but then not all the content that's available is already 4K.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's already like the shows showing 8K TVs and stuff like that. So you can buy an 8K TV, but then what will you watch on it, right?
Actually,
there's really almost nothing there.
Actually, I saw some discussion about full HD TV, that some guys had problems with that because like these celebrities and people who would run the shows, that it shows a lot of details of your skin, and you need much more makeup, like this stage makeup, to look smooth. Like you don't have like this huge, I don't like this pimple on your
looking to
forehead
to be perfect, right?
Yes,
Wow,
exactly.
To real.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
didn't
So
think people would be that like discerning. I mean,
that comes down to the discussion.
Mole?
That's kind of like reminding me of this discussion we had between like differentiating between the photographer's pursuit of perfection in photography and the CG artist's perfection for pursuit for imperfections, right? So
yeah,
these are like different paradigms, and the celebrities might have this paradigm of showing like reality more perfect than it is, and maybe it's just a trend. Like in art, you had history trends that were different beauty ideals and stuff like that. So
maybe
some times where simplicity was virtue, like keeping things simple and like clean, and there was like art periods where you had the abundant, decoration
I think
excess in everything.
In TV, this is like a standard of neutrality. Like everything is smooth and nothing kind of nothing like pimples and stuff like that. And I don't know, somebody has any kind. I mean, it looks neutral. You focus on the face, on people, what they say, those hosts, and they.
Unless you're watching these gore movies.
Oh yeah,
zombie apocalypse where you see all the details, all the guts. Yeah.
Then you need details in the. They would need a lot of makeup.
Which actually is a pretty interesting. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, like you to be able to see, like in some genres of film, or in some genres of film, I guess, and that applies to TV also. You like a lot of like there are some treatments to certain kinds of film that take a lot of advantage of like where like detail really shines. Like I guess like
nature, maybe?
something high contrast with like you the roughness is really, of surfaces are really highlighted, like maybe 300 or any of like the Zack Snyder movies, where it's like, it's like it's almost like super desaturated, and then the focus is really in like surface imperfection and all of these little things that happen, like that grittiness that happens, and like your skin looks extra porous, and or I don't know if you guys have ever seen The Book of Eli. You guys
No.
you guys ever seen that movie?
No, I haven't.
Not really. I know the movie, like what it's about or who's starring, but haven't seen it.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, like the treatment is kind of like, you can imagine watching that on high definition screens and maybe benefit from it. But I mean, yeah, like what? So I think overall, though, we kind of established that it's kind of like it's not 4K, 8K. It's not taking over the typical household anytime soon. But what about
or maybe we'll just get used to this whole crispy, because there's also kind of like an effect of over detailing stuff, or like unnatural smooth movement, like when you shoot at 60 frames per second, and also in the super high resolution, and then you have to really take into account the motion blur. I've watched an interesting video on YouTube about that. I'll post that in the link, where a videographer explains the details of the appraising the footage, and then you have to have a little bit of different settings for the motion blur, because our eyes are kind of like used to the specific amount of motion blur to make the motion feel natural. Like if you lose that, you're having a kind of like a weird impression of that being like too smooth, too perfect.
Also, this plastic image always is about losing some information. Like, for example, the Sin City, how much of the information is there from the footage?
That's also an interesting point. Like, I've seen a nice video about painting. Like, it was unrelated to maybe 3D or something like that, but it was just like digital painting tutorial where a guy was relating to like simplifying shapes and doing like the general block out of light and shade. And the idea that he was trying to sell was that really art is sometimes about doing less, and it's harder because you have to reduce cleverly, like just like our eyes do, our brains. We kind of like tend to simplify the things and just to make a thing impactful and make it nice to consume by our perception. It's sometimes about reducing the amount of things and focusing on just the interesting stuff, right?
Yeah.
So guiding our focus, and that's also happening in cinematography, CG in general. You don't like over focus everything. You just like guide the focus through the image, right?
At some point, I was very much into cinematography, and I would go to movie sets, and I was like this assistant, stuff like that, making photographs and talking with cinematographers. And before I went into 3D, and so I learned something at least. I mean, I knew I had some experience. I knew what's the way they are thinking and stuff like that. So I went into 3D, and I started to look on the these best works in 3D on the forums. And I noticed at first I kind of was like surprised and maybe even like dismissive, or like, why? Let's say that there was like this fantastic broken car render, like still image in some environment, and it had a lot of detail. There was a very long contrast between. I mean, you could see a lot of details in the shadows. There was some artificial lighting which was showing some more detail in some parts, like for example the lamps of this car. Also, they had some various light temperatures which were not really matching the environment. It was kind of unnatural, more of like a plastic idea. And I thought, well, this is not done well. I mean, at least to what I was used to in this cinematography, let's say, short course. And then I talked to some other cinematographer, and I talked about it with him and said, Well, actually, they are doing it good. I mean, this is not a mistake or something like that, because you have a lot of time to watch on the still image rendered, and you can have a lot of detail there, and you can wander with your eyes on this and look for something interesting. And as a cinematographer, you have to help the person who is viewing that movie to pay attention on the things which are important for this story. So actually, let's say, for example, I remember I was talking with I watched a guy who was cutting a video, and it was shot in the music video, and it was shot in some old a workshop with all these power tools, this welding stuff and stuff like that. And what he did was he put one light there from one direction. I mean, it was like a directional light, like in V-Ray you have the plane, lighting plane. So it was like the directional, but more scattered, more mild. It's not so sharp, but it was directional. And this guy said, we're talking to, she said, yeah. He said, this is a very good idea what he did, because all this stuff here is like a different colors, different materials, all these tools. So he created that one light which was like yellowish greenish, and because it was from that direction, it created that like a whole, like it unified the whole interior. But a lot of stuff was lost in the shadows, which didn't have a lot of detail. They were unexposed. And yeah, so that was what this guy was telling, that you don't have time to admire details when you are watching movies. You have to understand quickly what's the space, what's important.
That's true.
Have a quick emotional reaction to the mood. So this is why, for example, he was lighting it from one part, and he was not trying to show all the distance. Maybe when it comes to the face, the very close shots, he would give some more bounced back light with some I don't know, it's called flag, or I don't know, this screen with just white screen for bounce back light to make the face look more interesting, more to give more details in the shadows. But in general, he was rather trying to simplify it all, and yeah, because this is moving fast. Let's say this is fast action.
That's probably why the whole 4K or 8K demos on the TVs that are shown in the showrooms, these are slow motion videos, like time lapses, really slowly moving pictures, or even still shots.
There's a lion sitting in the savannah, and there's only Winter moving his hair. That's all.
Then you can watch all the hairs on the fur and be so in awe of these all details and stuff. But I think that there is one specific genre of CG that will really push the 4K, 8K stuff, and it already does to some extent with the texture madness. You get higher resolution textures all the time, and it seems to not stop at any moment. And we've all seen the latest Unreal Engine 5 demo and stuff. And that will be the gaming industry and the interactive stuff that also might be in arcades or whatever, where you have the VR or interactive experiences where you have you can change perspective, you can stop and focus on a part of the scene, or that's kind of I think a wider you can zoom in, you can get closer to a thing, right? Then you need that resolution, you need that detail, and it's been happening nowadays. A recent game, I'm not sure if it's already released, but the recent flight simulator.
Oh, I've heard about
that seems to be super realistic. With a world map, you can fly around the world and see really detailed, super photorealistic, environment where you're flying. But it's also kind of streamed from the net or something like that. The data, you don't have everything loaded to your computer all the time, because it's just too much data, right? It's just about the data amount that's required for that. So you just stream the parts of the maps that you need at the moment, right? Based on your location in the game, I think.
Mm-hmm. So
there are some bottlenecks. We already talked about this with the CPU and GPU war, right? So bottlenecks with the memory, with the transfer of data.
Yeah, and having to redraw like a 4K frame every millisecond, every second. I mean, like, uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, wouldn't that make the game just so much more expensive resource wise? Like how many gigs would you need to, assuming it wasn't like like a like you aren't playing from a server or something, like how many
Do you mean
many
creating the assets, or?
No, I mean, like, I'm not really sure. I don't really know how it works, but because but theoretically you would be rendering, let's say, 8K frames, like 68K frames a second as you play, right? Like it's you basically get like a real-time render every second of when you play the game. And so if each of those renders is at 4K, I don't know. Does it work that way? Isn't that going to? Is there a threat of like there being like you would need more memory, more disk space to play the game?
I'm sure, but this kind of obstacles were always conquered, so it's never going to end. I'm rather afraid that it would be more of a problem for creating assets, for creating some visual coherent visual style, which can be more difficult when you get into this detail. You have to have control over.
You would need bigger maps. Is that what you mean? Like, is that what you
technically, yeah, and artistically as well. I mean, let's say that recently there's that strange game which looks like everything is a huge wand. I mean, like very strange game. Like it's like very, very, very naturalistic and very like a lot of flesh. Like the whole universe is built of one big flesh part. And so that needs some creative director who's going to make sure that all the details, all the parts are helping the general vision of this world. And when you go more into the detail, like you have bigger resolution and bigger fidelity of all the assets and textures, then you actually have to monitor it also on this level. Not only technical, like there's a lot of more work to do, but also there's a lot of more like artistic control you need to maintain over this stuff, so it doesn't end up with something that don't have this impression you wanted to have. Like it can kind of scatter around.
But then again, you have the all those automation AI helpers for you.
Yeah. So we talked about this. Actually, we talked about this, and I think this, when it comes to games, this is the answer. This procedural workflows, AI. This is the answer. But I think like the technical part of the displaying the game on the screen is for the Intel to solve and NVIDIA. But for the artists and for creators, it's exactly this resolution of textures and maybe some more bigger challenges in keeping it that whole thing together. But it's true that in games, finally you have to make bigger textures than just one resolution, because you can just go very close, and then you need a little bigger one. I think that Unreal Engine, there was that moment when that woman was going like, there was like a very narrow connection between two rooms. Like she had to kind of squeeze herself between two walls, and there was that moment that there was a very detailed texture on these walls. So it was there like covered, and and using this brush imported models without baking them, all this stuff. Yeah, so this is going to be this is that part that needs to be done for the 4K to work, even not 4K.
Yeah. But actually, it's nice. That's an interesting segue into another aspect of this whole thing that we can talk about, which is so we've been talking about like larger frames for an actual frame sequence. But what about size for maps? Like in what situations? Like, I don't know. Do you think that eventually the trend will be for people to kind of be using 8K maps in place of 4K, and then 4K in place of 2K? What do you like? What about like HDR maps that you can download at like even 32K? Like, what do you think the point of those? I mean, the HDR is kind of makes me wonder, but yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, the HDRs are generally needed in high resolutions if you want them for backgrounds, because you don't really, in the end shot that you do from a scene, you almost never see the whole map, right? It's spherical, so you just see a portion of it. So if you don't want it to be blurred, it needs to be very high resolution. And then if you want high, all the details from the lighting of this image, it also is necessary. But then sometimes it's producing noise as well. So sometimes it's better to use lower resolutions as well if you just use it for the lighting, not for the background. But I think that the trend in textures is going to be like going higher. But this also like is kind of like dependent on the use case, really, because there's also like the mobile gaming market, which is not that far ahead. Like it's also going to move, like, in terms of screen resolutions, but phones are not going to be the size of the screen that the TVs are, because they are to be held in hand, right? So I think mobile games are a different world. You need them really packed and resource wise, like efficient. So you don't really use that high resolution textures. You use low poly models and stuff like that, right? So it's a different world. But but in desktops or VR, which is going to probably, it's being hyped, but it's not yet, I think, at the level that it might get in the future. So I think it will just move to higher and higher resolutions, right? Because of this, that you have to have assets that you come close to, right? That they are interactive, right? So you can guide that, in terms of effectiveness of the app itself, right? Like the pipelining of the data sent through your computer, like I said, with this flight simulator that you just download or load into RAM the information that's needed at the certain point in the game, right? Just like with micro polygon displacement that you do in rendering, right? So that you just display tessellate the things that are close to the camera, right, or close to your your person in game. But the asset itself, if you have an open world in a game, that is the trend in most games, I think, right now. Like that's seemingly the trend that gaming is going to be aiming at. So you have to have a large amount of data for that. And it's also, you can see it in the asset preparation world, that you are starting to use like things like UDIMs, for example, to be able to use bigger texture sets for single asset.
No, well, I think like UDIMs, I mean, like they've been used in VFX for a long time, right? Because the idea is that you would have to create an asset that can be, if needed, brought close to the camera and still have the level of fidelity you would expect, from if that asset were real. So you need to be able to have like an insane amount of
right, and the more
pixel density for
and even more if you're giving the viewer the option of interactive interaction with the scene. Everyone who played all the old games like Doom or whatever, you can remember getting close to the wall and just seeing this pixels up close.
Yeah.
So, or even like going through the wall. Right? So these are kind of like this.
Actually, I had the problem with like I use ROI textures, and they were very high resolution, I think 4K or 8K, and they're very fine. And when I used them to render smaller images, there was a problem that a lot of this detail didn't really render good in lower resolution. It would just be killed by the anti-aliasing, and so I had to either downscale them and set, like in Photoshop, to add more contrast for these details to be visible. I mean, of course, if you have smaller resolution, you don't see some details, but you can see bigger details. And when you use high resolution texture, it can also not translate very well to the lower resolution render. So yeah, I remember there was this guy I was helping that he made a picture of he made a high resolution picture of some tiles for building, and he was making a visualization. So the picture looked great, but when he put it on the building and render with, let's say, 2K, and the pictures were in like 8K, it's not like they lose detail. The rendered tile didn't look the same way as the real tile when it was rendered in lower resolution. So, for example, if in reality you would look at this wall with these tiles, you could recognize that this is the same thing, but you're just more far away, so you don't see all the detail. But in general, you have this feeling and this impression of this particular material. But when you took this high resolution texture and rendered in lower resolution, it could lose even the features which were visible in this resolution normally. So he had to prepare them better. He had to like pump up the details give them bigger contrast, then rescale them down with the right filter, and make sure that when it's rescaled down, the features are kept from this high resolution, and then render them. So it was not like I had a lot of problems with ROI textures with that. They just had too fine and too like not really contrasty enough detail to be rendered at lower than like half of the resolution or something like that. They look great in very high resolution, a lot of fine detail, but I just I had all this stuff washed out from the render. It was like I would use like cheaper and small and worse texture to render with lower resolution, or I would have to prepare these textures for this rescaling the render and anti-aliasing applied on this and stuff like that. So
yeah, that's a because 3D is a kind of a complicated process. So many things are going on, like the textures, the the ray tracing, and then the anti-aliasing, right? So kind of like a lot of factors come into play, not just the texture themselves, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it also probably depends on the angle that you're viewing that.
Yes.
If it's probably different when you're like looking at this object at a raising angle or just straight up to the camera.
Yeah, so. But if you take a very low contrast texture with a lot of fine detail, and you will render it, for example, in Blender, like you have 8K texture, you will render it in like 1020 1200 resolution, you'll see that a lot of stuff was gone, and even the stuff that in theory should be visible at this resolution, because these features are big enough, but they were swallowed by the rendering and calculating light and the anti-aliasing. So I think this is why many guys render stills in bigger resolution, and they downscale them to rather than just counting on the anti-aliasing to bring all the details. There's the technique.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I was thinking, guys. Okay, so if this is not resolution, like this is the boundary of the technology, like looking for new impressions for the clients, for the people who are going to buy these TVs or watch movies. So where do you think that technology? I mean, because manufacturers of TVs are always going to compete, and they're also always trying to come up with some kind of new feature that was not there in the previous version. I don't think it's going to end. So where do you think there's a space for the TV screens manufacturers
for advances?
Yes, to give some more quality, or maybe better experience.
That's a good and tricky question, I think, because already we are seeing like the 8K TVs or stuff like that. So but another catchy name, but 16K, I don't think so.
No, I think that's
I think 8 seems like more catchy. Like 16 is already like a little bit bloated. So
besides, I think it's going to be established that the whole thing is a gimmick, right?
Like, yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's a marketing.
At 8K, it's going to for sure
catch name, right? So it's like I think it's going to be some kind of a move from the marketers of tech marketers, as it was like with software's names, right? Like you had V-Ray named with a naming, like the coders naming conventions 2.4 or stuff like that. So then for example, it turned to V-Ray Next, and
like for example, these curved computer screens to like watch movies, because they're so huge that they cannot be flat. They have to take into consideration like every part of the movie has to be in the same
but then it's how big the angle can be, how big the curve can be, because it will take more space of your room then if you just make a huge screen, and also it will be curved.
So, I was just was curious, what do you think are the place where they can do this? Like,
to be honest, I think the next big step is whoever makes whoever makes it so that it's like you're wearing, like it's a small device, and then it projects like this holographic light upward, and then you get like something like you see in Star Wars but in full color. Whatever. Like that would probably be I don't know. I'm just kidding. I don't know. Like it doesn't. So like, I think at this point
that's kind of like V-Ray and augmented reality already happening.
Yeah, like
at some extent,
it kind of begs the question whether like TV, like I don't know, like maybe we're not going to be seeing much of TV screens for much longer. For all you know, like the next generation might just be wearing a HoloLens or whatever augmented reality contraptions being made these days. I know that like Microsoft has been making a lot of development on the HoloLens, right? And it's supposed to be the new
TV.
So this HoloLens would create really 3D
like you're wearing image? Well, you're like, I think that you'd be able to watch you'd be able to use it as you'd probably be able to watch like movies with it, but then I think primarily it's meant to, like, you wear them like glasses, and then you can, I don't know, like you can stick virtual post-its anywhere in your house, You
could
every time you look in that direction, it's there. You have like a UI that pops up and like, dinner at 7 a.m. It's like,
you have Dave Chappelle making his special in your living room just for you. It's really standing.
So and the next step is that chip in your brain, right? So
Oh yeah.
Just projecting stuff in your imagination. But then I think there are some problems with that, VR thing, because right now, like the for example, the Oculus glasses, or generally the VR full VR stuff is just like shutting you away from your real life, and you just immerse in a virtual reality.
Mhm.
And TV is a little bit different on that level. Like it seems to bring like reality, like different reality to your living room, but it still keeps you in your space. You can cook and watch TV. You can do something and watch TV at the same time, right? So you're
Mhm.
kind of like half in a different world and half in your own world. And that HoloLens, maybe it's a little bit of compromise on that, but then it also doesn't give you like this full window to this other world, right? Because if it's like mixed with your reality to some, like, there's a problem. Like if you're trying to make it VR for you, or just like blend with your reality, there's this smooth transition between this different world that you're kind of connecting with and your real world, right? So
Mhm.
there's always this
but
fine line. You can set it up.
think of it
differently,
this
like-
way. Like you could wear your AR glasses. You could be hanging out or making dinner with your family, and then your whole family is wearing glasses, but you're all talking like you would normally. It's just that when everybody looks at the blank space in your house,
you're dialing in your
there
aunt
is a
and-
virtual screen that's
Oh.
up there for everyone to see playing the movie, right? Like
Wow.
you're looking at a virtual TV in your real space. So
Oh.
I mean,
Mhm.
I think that maybe the relationship we have growing up with the television set as something
Wow.
being maybe a balance, like our like a few generations back, people would say, oh, like kids these days they're always like locked on that like box like contraption, like not really engaging with the real world, just sitting on their couches and eating chips and watching shows or whatever. Like, so I mean, I think that's more that has more to do with our personal orientations as being part of a certain generation than it does, like I think that even if everybody does start using AR glasses, it wouldn't have mattered what the new technology was. It's really just like whether we mature as a species enough not to treat it like a vice and become too addicted and allow ourselves to be lost in it without being
Yeah.
able to
like
balance our
the
real
modern
life.
person with a cell phone right in the hand. Just
Well, yeah,
Homo-
that's true, which is horrible.
Homo iPhone.
I mean,
whatever.
I can say with pride that I barely even look at my phone. So, I mean, I don't have that affliction, thankfully. But I get it. I mean, that's
You lucky bastard.
Me too. I mean, I hate smartphones. I actually, for some time, went back to my old Nokia because I just wanted to pick up the phone and talk and just put it away. But yeah, I'm back to the smartphone. But it's I'm trying to do as much as I can to read real books and to look at real stuff, not on the screen. And as a professional
much.
in this industry, you almost
fed-
have your eyes melted.
Yeah, fed up with the pixel stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is, I mean, I want to, look out from my window on the real park or real tree. Just thank you very much for another screen, like for work screen, leisure screen. Like, thank you. Now, this is like going to sleep, listening to podcasts, and just I stopped doing that as well. When my brain is going to just interact with reality. Finally,
yeah, just sit in
during the day.
physical world. Yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. I make it a point actually, like every morning and night, to just have like 10 to 30 minutes of just sitting down and spacing out on the horizon or whatever.
10 minutes a day. It's like you are in jail, basically.
No, 10 to 30 minutes twice a day, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Or like, and then like whenever it suits me, I can.
What
little
if
breaks throughout.
What if jails in future are going to look like this? You are going to be at your place, but you are going to just wear this helmet with the video of you being in jail, and that's
Oh man!
you cannot do anything else.
What if everybody does like become super, like everyone is like plugged into this amazing virtual world where, you know, like you're looking at everyone through an augmented reality lens. You look at the mirror and you see a reflection of yourself, and you're like some sexy ass dude or whatever, like whoever you are. Yeah, you're like the avatar that you make for yourself, basically. So you look like you're the ideal version of yourself. Everyone is the ideal versions of themselves. And everything is just littered with all of this like visual candy. And in that society, jail is you, like you live in a reasonable space. Like you can, like it's a pretty big enough space, like for you, like it's a compound, let's say, and then you can do whatever you want, but you can't wear those things. And people are so hooked, like they're so dependent on those devices that's like a horrible punishment already. Like you're if you commit a crime, they remove you're deprived of that augmented reality, and then you're just chilling with the trees and the birds. Honestly, like I wouldn't mind that scenario at all, but who knows, right? Like the younger people, like, you know, like people who grow up with technology like that, they just, for them, and they might drive them crazy.
There was this book of Stanisław Lem, which is like Matrix, but it's all made by chemistry. So people live in this fantastic society, but finally you can take a pill and wake up in the real society, which is much, much, much worse. And there are people there who are fighting against the system, like in Matrix and stuff like that. But another twist in that book was that actually you could take another pill and realize that this reality where you are fighting against the Matrix, like in Neo and, you know, this movie, actually it's even worse. That was actually a reality to be projected for people who got out from the Matrix, to keep them in the system, just thinking that they are fighting them. Because when they took another pill, they were all lying in some like almost like in coffins, and just like the real Matrix image, but less electronic, like from the real Matrix. But this fighting area was a dream as well. That was so
Inception style, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Dream inside a dream.
It's horrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like getting from pixel to the real world, that's one maybe use case of really high resolution. If you need a still shot that you want to print in a very, 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 very big format, and you need that crispy high detail of your awesome artwork that you created.
Yeah.
Because you have a super big living room with a very, you know, a loft style living room with a huge wall that you want to cover with your art.
And surprisingly, like we've had actual customers who had to have like resolutions that were like I'm sure we've had a couple of like resolutions above 10K.
Yeah.
Right? Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Blender View. I remember there was a View guy.
View, yeah.
So in general, it's a good moment to mention our services, because we have this mode of rendering of still images for almost all software we support. Modo, 3ds Max with Corona, with V-Ray, Blender, View, also V-Ray for Rhino and SketchUp. And I think that we have the Cinema 4D back. We hadn't had it for some time because of some changes in Cinema 4D. So basically you upload this still image, and it's going to be rendered on between 5 and 40 computers to smaller
You upload your
parts.
3D scene, you mean, right?
Yeah, you upload your 3D scene straight from your 3D application, and then they are going to be rendered on multiple computers, and finally they are going to be merged into the final image automatically. So you download ready frame, and you can have your still image 40 times faster than on even very fast single computer thanks to this technology. So
to put it another way, it's like you're rendering. Let's say you have basically it's you render segments of your frame at the same time. Yeah, so the render time will only take the time it would take to render your image at, let's say, even 1/10 of its actual size.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the best way to speed up. So we can speed up also in render also high resolution still image on many computers, not only animation. And this is a big like difference between rendering for 12 hours and 30 minutes. It's a sometimes the deadline thing, like yes or no. And so that's very useful. It's also this workflow has automatic baking. So if you're using some GI that would have some like interpolation part, like for example irradiance map, light cache, and it can render on differently on many computers. We have the automatic baking. You don't have to prepare the baked GI map to use to render this image on the Garage farm. You just it happens automatically. There's a job which does it, then loads it into the scene, and you render on multiple computers using the map, which was rendered on single computers. So you have you can see these seams in the strips.
And if you're unfamiliar with like if you're wondering why you would need to bake a still image, it happens because you'll be rendering a fraction of that image on a different node on a different computer. Yeah, so if you don't bake your GI, you can get a different result from each fraction of that image, and when we put the image together, the lighting will look inconsistent. So
exactly.
Yeah, and the advantage is like Michał says, you don't really have to do it on your own anyway.
Yeah, and I think like some people were expecting like the recent rise of these live ray tracing, rasterized image engines like Eevee, or just the live real-time engines that they were going to take over traditional ray tracing. I've just like listened to a nice conversation in CG Garage, I think, podcast with Andrew Price, and they were discussing like the future of renderers, and the guy was from Chaos Group, and he said that they are fully developing right now the projects with Project Lavina, I think, or something like that, or for V-Ray, like future development for V-Ray, and this is like fully live ray tracing. So like this is the direction that they are developing it, right? He said that like the rasterizers are limited to some extent, like compared to like the ray tracing technology. Recent developments in tech, right, allow to like almost live ray tracing right now. You have these and also development of the render engine goes that direction. So probably
so
in the future we'll see then ray tracers strike back, so to speak.
You mean that? But do you mean that like they're not continuing development on their, like they have a like, does that mean that like traditional V-Ray is deprecated? Like traditional rendering will eventually.
It's just that they see the future of rendering, because with ray tracing you just get all the photorealistic effects like reflections and stuff like that calculated. It's just like more reliable than rasterization, and he said that it's even like more resource friendly at the end of the road, right? From the coder's perspective. So something like that.
Traditional
I'm not
ray
sure
tracing.
if I could like fully comprehend every end of it, but that was what he said, and basing on Chaos Group being one of the leaders of development of render engines, I think. It's a nice insight, right? So we can expect the strike back of ray tracers.
Yeesh. Okay. Well, yeah. I don't know personally if they can really emulate like random walk subsurface scattering in real time with real time ray tracing, then I'm sold. But until that happens, I kind of tend to favor the traditional way, at least in some cases. Anyway, I think we've reached the end of our conversation.
Yep.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was nice.
Okay. Yeah,
and I think it was interesting, and unluckily we don't provide you with 16K video up till now, but I hope the sound experience was nicer because we've improved the gear a little bit, so we hope our podcast right now will be much more pleasant for you to listen to.
Yeah.
So guys, if you have any comments, or maybe we would like to, propose a subject which you are interested in for next podcasts, you can comment it in the YouTube comments under the video, or in the place where you found the links for the podcast. So
yeah,
for now we are coming up with the subject ourselves, but if you are interested in something, then we could address it.
Yeah, so I saw that there were already comments under our last episode, so there are people listening.
Yay!
Great.
Okay, so maybe
we are listening to you guys.
Yeah. So we'll have a look at what you guys are curious about, and maybe try to address those questions in the latter episodes. But anyway, thanks for listening. Yeah, as always, have a good one, and we'll see you next time
on CG Talks.
Yeah. Bye, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
See ya.